is now coming to the podium to give us an update. I'm sorry to blindside you with this one, Bob.
You'll pay. You'll pay. Well, quite frankly, I don't know what to say other than thank you very much, because I'm about to give you 10 minutes on DIK. It is a great honour to be recognised by Rotary Melbourne, and for me, the fact that it's the foundation makes it even doubly better, given what I know the foundation has done. Interestingly enough, several people have talked about what the foundation did for East Timor roofing. In fact, the foundation provided nothing for East Timor roofing. But what it did was provide a small amount of money for the microfinance scheme, 100,000 US, small amount of money in the overall scheme of things, but that was turned into nearly $1.5 million in business loans over a period of 2 years. And they were all for Timorese to start their own businesses. Some 10, 15 years later, when we got rid of East Timor roofing to the Salesians, most of those businesses were still running. That to me was the power of the Rotary Foundation really at work, and the power that you'll be able to give to that foundation when you all sign up for the Polio Plus activity that we've spoken about previously. And by the time Dennis finishes his address today, you'll be dashing to fill out those pieces of paper. So, Reg, on behalf of me, thank you very, very much for the honour that you've bestowed. Okay. Now I'll start what I thought I was going to come up here and do. Well, my involvement in DIK started sometime after Timor-Leste gained its independence in 2002, when the West Footscray store had started to ship all manner of goods to Timor, and they sought some assistance in packing containers. That started my involvement with donations in kind of just over 20 years, and it's impossible to capture in these next few minutes the multitude of activities and my involvement, but more importantly, capture the great service that that project delivers. Knowing where we started is important to understand where we are today. In 2008-9, I chaired the District Rorks Committee, and DIK sat under that committee. A major disagreement occurred in 2009 when the then District Governor sought to close the store. He believed the store was a rubbish tip and not something that Rotary should continue. This led to a large investigation involving the 5 other DIK stores in Victoria, leading to the recommendation that apart from Geelong, the other stores should consolidate into West Footscray, which would continue operating. Everyone was happy with that except the District Governor, who then advised that the licence fee for the store at West Footscray, which had been donated by Golden Brothers Transport, would cease. The district would not meet the annual cost of $30,000, so the store was directed to close. Over the intervening couple of years, the tenant in the other half of the shed was moving out gradually and left. We'd expanded into the vacated space such that we had the whole of shed 40. So we went from 1,400 square metres to 3,400 square metres. The edict to close was not greeted with any enthusiasm by the clubs, including ours. There was considerable pushback, resulting in the district agreeing to a year's amnesty, but if the store was to continue, an incorporated association would have to take over the licence, and it looked as though Rotary Melbourne would be that. I'd expanded my time at the store up to a couple of days a week and quite a few weekends. There were discussions galore trying to come to an acceptable solution. I convened a meeting of 4 clubs, West Footscray, Essendon, Baldwin and Melbourne, where we decided to incorporate donations in kind. This occurred on the 4th of May 2010, so 15 years ago. I became the company secretary, public officer, until I passed over this role earlier this year. Shed 40 was not what you'd call the most organised location. Bill Dagg, who was running the store, had retired, handed over to Laurie Fisher, and he and I set about trying to get some order in the place. We'd taken over some of the previous tenants' racking, constructed a small meeting room to complement the borrowed demountable office, and commenced regular bulletins to clubs. We continued to send some containers, mainly to Timor and Pacific Islands, but also to a couple to Africa. Included in the goods to Timor were the 2-ton coils of steel, rolling stock for East Timor roofing, our project in Bacau, which we've talked about. We were able to buy a reconditioned forklift and an old pallet wrapper from a previous tenant. It was a pretty ragtag organisation in 2010. The need to grow the membership of DIK was a pressing one, both to generate funds to pay the rental and to continue to ship the humanitarian aid to Timor. As our space expanded, our rental continued to rise, by now $70,000 a year, but we were slowly getting more clubs to join the incorporated body. This was hard slog, particularly when our landlord advised that following increases in state government land tax and other charges, our rental would double. This represented the ongoing commercial rate in the complex, so we've been enjoying very beneficial rates. Regardless, we had no capacity to fund $140,000 being requested. So we were faced with options to either move or shut up shop. Our landlord was amenable to us staying. We were trouble-free tenants. So after long and involved negotiations, we agreed to move to the empty shed 39, a less desirable shed for the owners, but perfectly satisfactory for us, but still at $110,000 a year. A big financial jump, but one we could manage, albeit on a hand-to-mouth basis. Shed 39 was empty, so we could organise the shed to suit the operation, which was still growing. The new shed had a great meeting room, office accommodation, luxuries like both ladies' and gents' toilets. We were also able to construct a large lunchroom and kitchen, following a marvellous donation that also provided us with a new van, 2 vans, something that we needed desperately because of the donations available to us. We purchased a new pallet wrapper and we had donated a new electric forklift. The challenge was to relocate our racking and the goods from one shed to the other. We had to purchase more racking as we did not have enough to transfer, but we didn't have any money to buy it. We were told that our existing racking was old and we wouldn't meet the current regulations. To fund this and the relocation of 25 sets of 3-tier racking, I launched a campaign to sponsor the racks. In a very short time, I think it was 2.5 months, we had the rack sponsored, relocated, and the costs of $35,000 fully covered. That's the new racking, and that's what the store looked like when we opened it in shed 39. We had 3,410 square metres of triple racked shelving, and we'd really moved the operation to another level. We really cranked up the shipping to more countries, and from 2000 to the end of June 2004, pardon me, we'd shipped 708 containers to 35 different countries. That's a container that we shipped to Ukraine. That was probably one of the most delightful things that we did, to be able to ship. We've shipped 3 now to Ukraine, and that truck loading there is loading pallets of medical goods from the store that was driven to Amberley and flown across by the RAF to Ukraine with the Bushmasters that the Australian government donated to the Ukrainian people. Lost my spot. 2019 marked another big leap in operations as we were now registered for GST. We achieved registration with ACNC and were approved for deductible gift recipient status. These were big advances from a club project that had started in shed 40. Never a problem with donations of goods. I won't talk about that in any great detail. We were seen as being responsible upcyclers, and hospitals were aware of what we were doing. We were now being offered all manner of sophisticated equipment. Anaesthetic machines, ventilators, ECGs, patient monitors, dialysis units, humidity cribs, just to name a few. Now, we weren't skilled in knowing how these units operated, and before we would ship them, we needed to make sure that they were all in working order. So we set about finding a medical technician who could check all of this equipment before it was put into a container. We were also receiving heaps of hospital consumables, most of it past the expiry date, but still perfectly usable in the countries we were sending to. These included bandages, gloves, syringes, all of those sorts of things. It never ceased to amaze me, the range of goods that hospitals tossed out, but we were always very happy recipients. We were pretty affected by COVID closures, but we were still able to send containers as well as a dozen pallets of urgently needed medical supplies by road to Darwin for on forward to Timor, as well as a 40-foot container of hand sanitizer. The two areas I haven't mentioned are education and mobility aids. Previously, we'd been oriented totally in sending containers overseas. But mobility aids, walking frames, crutches over toilet frames, shower chairs and the wheelchairs were all stocked. As well as being sent against hospital wish lists, there is a steady stream of occupational therapists who come to the store every week seeking goods for many patients who were not able to provide these items for themselves. Last year, we delivered over 1,000 items to the occupational therapists for their patients free of cost. So it's not just sending containers, it's doing a lot in the community as well. DIK is quite a large project financially, and I'll finish on this point. These numbers give you some idea of the size. There are 33 DIK Inc. members, and more clubs are looking to join because they see the opportunities the store can provide. The store can't function without volunteers. There's a terrific one here today in Jim Orchard, who's out there every Tuesday, and more clubs are looking to join. As I said at the outset, trying to capture 20 years in a few minutes is a challenge, but I hope I've given you a flavour of what I've been doing at DIK. My role's passed to two Rotarians. The secretarial is now George D'Souza from Camberwell, and the operations manager is Colleen Diofe from Brighton. You ask if I enjoyed it. You bet. It's certainly cheaper than gym fees, and the feedback you receive from the container recipients makes it all worthwhile. We always ask for feedback from the containers that have been sent, and the glow on the faces of kids that have got nothing, whether it's a desk and chair that we've sent to 22 new schools built in Timor. They built the schools but didn't give them any furniture, make it all worthwhile. So that's my story about DIK. As I say, I could bore you for another half an hour without any trouble at all, but I hope it's given you the flavour of my activity, and I'm sure that they would welcome any one of you who'd like to go out and see just what it's all about in person. Thank you very much. I'm now going to introduce Past District Governor Dennis Shaw, but I want to remind everybody about the Polio Plus Society that we spoke about last week. Those of you who didn't pick up one of those lovely little Polio Plus brochures, there's an electronic one in this week's bulletin, and I'm sure Joe can accommodate you if necessary. Now, Past District Governor Dennis Shaw is a chemical engineer by profession, working in the pulp, paper and packaging industry, both here in Australia and abroad. And before I tell you about Dennis's journey, I apologise, Dennis, because you've been really cut short. Dennis's journey in community service began with Apex in Queensland before Rotary at Aspley. His career in Rotary is a distinguished one. There is probably not a role in the club or a district that Dennis has not held. I could go until 2 o'clock telling you about those roles. From president through to district governor, Dennis has done them all, an exemplar Rotarian. The Rotary Foundation has a special place in his Rotary life. He is a trustee of the Rotary Foundation 2023 to 2027 and vice chair of the Rotary Foundation Australia, and a worthy recipient of the Rotary Foundation Distinguished Service Award. Dennis, please talk to us about the impact of the Rotary Foundation.
Thank you, Bob. I think you were giving me a bit of a hint a few days ago that I wouldn't get my full time. So some of us may have to huddle around the PC later on to finish the presentation, but to no concern. I think all the appropriate protocols have been observed today, but I do want to particularly recognise my foundation colleague Murray Verso at the zone level, and Peter Rogers, who works as a member of the Regional Council, both very important in the in the scheme of things. For as long as I can remember, I've been talking about the magic of the Rotary Foundation. So I was delighted when President Stephanie decided on the magic of Rotary for her theme. The Rotary Foundation is often called the engine room of Rotary, and I think it will help to amplify that magic of the Rotary Foundation or Rotary International. But we talk about the Rotary Foundation, but what do we really know about it? How does it really fit into Rotary? What's it all about? Now, you're business and community leaders, so I want to talk to you as a sort of a business case here about the Rotary Foundation, what it does. The talk is more informational, perhaps, than inspirational, but if I've done my job, then perhaps it'll be the start of a journey of inspiration for you all. So let's lift the veil and let's talk about Rotary and the Rotary Foundation. So what defines us as Rotarians? Well, we have our core values of service, fellowship, diversity, integrity, and leadership. And they're sort of translated into our mottos. For RI, service above self, you know this, and for Rotary Foundation, doing good in the world. And of course, we put that into our vision statement, which can be sort of summarized as together people create change. But we also have our mission statements. And I want you to concentrate on the orange bit. It's about advancing world understanding, goodwill, and peace. And that's in the Rotary Foundation mission statement. But the important thing is the foundation is there to help Rotary members achieve that objective. And then, of course, we have an action plan of impact, reach, engagement, and adaptation. Rotary Foundation is all about impact, but our reach and our engagement comes through working with our partners, our members, and businesses as well. So all of this mottos and slogans, they don't make an organisation. We are part of something really large. Rotary has around 800 employees that are there to support the 1.25 million members of Rotary around the world. You've heard about some of the other statistics of the 37,000 clubs. 200 of those people work from our 6 international offices. But it's a complicated business. We've got numerous cash accounts, various entities, 27 currencies, lots of bank accounts, and so many different accounts to channel our foundation programs. We have our own internal office of investment. At any given time, we have about $1.4 billion US of investments. And as I say, there are all these other things that are part of Rotary as we know it. It is a unique business. It operates in 10 official languages. And the way it works, the way we hold it all together is through committees that are committees of either the Rotary International Board or the Rotary Foundation or both. For those of you who haven't been, Rotary is headquartered in Evanston, just north of Chicago, and from the boardroom there, you can see the city skyline in the distance. Whoops. Rotary International and the Rotary Foundation are companies, corporations. They're both non-taxable corporations. There's no tax on profit because there is no profit. The difference with the Rotary Foundation is that it is set up to be a deductible company. In other words, if you make donations, then you can deduct it from your tax. It is set up to operate for humanitarian and educational purposes. Like any board, both the boards set strategic direction, they ensure resources, and they provide oversight to what is happening. There are 17 directors, plus the president-elect for the Rotary International, and 15 trustees for the Rotary Foundation, each of us serving 4-year terms. And here we are in our splendid photograph here. So how do we operate? As I say, there are 9 associate foundations. Those foundations are all set up essentially to provide tax deductibility in the countries where they operate. But the Rotary Foundation in Australia is a bit more complex. When you make a donation personally to the Rotary Foundation, you're going to be doing it probably through TAFT, the Australian Rotary Foundation Trust. Now, theoretically, those donations have to go to overseas approved projects approved by the Australian government. But in fact, of course, clubs are not part of that, so we can move donations around so that they go essentially to where you want them. More recently, we set up a public benevolent institute, which enables the donations from individuals, private and ancillary funds, from corporates as well, that we can invest back into Australian projects. And more recently, we have been piloting CSR grants where for-profit companies can make a donation and to go into Rotary projects. At the moment, we're looking for volunteers to start that off. This is complicated, however, by the fact that there are definitions about what you can receive a tax-deductible donation for, and it really has to be for the relief of sickness and poverty. So it means that some of our areas of focus donations are not really eligible, such as environmental projects in the main. So how do we work? We work mainly through volunteer staffed committees to which are assigned trustees and directors. So there are specific committees for the Rotary Foundation, and there are a lot of joint committees as well. And then, of course, on top of that, and then they operate through the staff of Rotary International, and the boards review what happens there. Rotary International has lots of committees as well, but they're all underpinned by our financial integrity. Both the Rotary International and the Rotary Foundation have their own finance committees overseen by the boards of directors and trustees. They're underpinned by the Audit Committee, the Investment Committee, and the Operations Review Committee. So now with that background, we are at the point of the magic of the Rotary Foundation. How does it work? So your donations, be it through your personal giving, Polio Plus Society, gift agreements, Centurions, fund all of these magical programs that we do, such as vocational training teams, Peace Fellows, Global Scholars, Global Grants, District Grants, Disaster Response Grants, and polio eradication, and more recently, large programs of scale. We have 7 causes or areas of focus, but we didn't just pick those out of the air. They are there consistent with one or more of the 17 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. More magic. Polio eradication, I know Murray would have talked to you about this. We're asking clubs and individuals to assist in our work, which is still ongoing. This is the priority for Rotary International and the Rotary Foundation. Peace is our passion, and we have these areas in which we further the pursuit of peace. So what makes the Rotary Foundation different? Well, it starts off that our projects are all about what is needed, not what we think is the perception of what is needed. So it starts at the beginning through a community assessment. And these have to deliver long-term sustainable goals. They're all about having Rotary engagement from the outset, from the planning and the delivery. This is underpinned by a very modest administration cost. It works around the notion of district designated funds, but also supported by individual donations, club donations, business donations, and other partners. Underpinned, of course, by rigorous financial management, all of which leads to the fact that year after year, we are deemed to be one of the top charities in the world. More magic from the Rotary Foundation. So it's all about delivering impact, as I said, and we do that hopefully by members being inspired, supporting our strategies to achieve all that. Through this, we're doing good in the world, globally and locally. And There are some amazing outcomes from all of these things, and it's all supported and built on Rotary Foundation's reputation. I said before that the Rotary Foundation is known as the engine room of Rotary, but it's also the heartbeat of Rotary, the pulse. It's what makes Rotary what it is. Think about Rotary as you know it. If there was no Rotary, we would not need the Rotary Foundation. But Rotary as we know it today would be nothing like it is without the Rotary Foundation. I talked about sustainability in the interests of time because I've been truncated a little here. I'll just quickly skip over some of this stuff. But you may be aware that of those 7 areas of focus, the passion for many of them is fighting disease and providing clean water. And these are 2 areas that I know this club has been very, very much involved in. We've heard about the Give Every Child a Future, which was driven by the 4 foundation clubs in Australasia. And you heard about the remarkable outcomes of those. We have 4 funds which you can donate to. The annual fund, which funds our projects and our scholarships. The endowment fund, building for the future, supporting those projects ongoing. The polio fund, Murray's talked all about that, so I won't need to delve into that. And of course, more recently, the disaster fund. As much as we want projects to be sustainable, we do recognise that there are disasters happening all the time. And you can see on this map the type of disasters that have been supported and where they've been supported, including here in Australia. But our donor base is changing. Once the clubs were the donors to the Rotary Foundation. Now nearly 80% of our donations come from individuals. And so it is important that we all understand what it is we're donating to. Now here's the ultimate in magic puddings. Here's an example of a named endowment fund. Back in 1994, if you'd donated $25,000 today, it would be have a market value of $46,000, so it's maintained its real value. But in that time, we would have spent $58,000 on doing good in the world. So absolutely the magic pudding. We are at the moment trying to build our endowment fund. We have this gimmicky thing of $2.025 billion by 2025. If we get to that, we'll be pretty poor relative to Harvard University, which has over 50 billion, but you've got to start somewhere. We're not quite there, and we look for support from all of us to try and reach that goal or get as close as we can by the end of this Rotary year. Now, I give this presentation to other clubs, and so some of these objectives are things that you already achieve and surpass, in fact. But it all starts by doing something. Don't start with the money, start with the project, and the money will follow. So we encourage every club to look at this as perhaps a model for what we might follow. Chairman of the Board of Trustees, past President Mark Maloney, has these things he talks about as magic markers. And I've distilled these down into some personal magic markers that you might think about. So let's all think about ways to do good in the world through the Rotary Foundation. Let's positively assist in raising awareness of and supporting our priority, which is polio eradication. But let's have a family discussion about our philanthropic goals. And there are things we can do to make it easy. Join the Polio Plus Society, $100 a year. Make a small contribution to the annual fund. If you're feeling really bold, consider your capacity to be a Paul Harris Society member, $1,000 a year. Now look, there are lots of good charities out there. In fact, there's about 62,000 of them in Australia. And the ones I've listed here, they were easy to get hold of the logos. They're all good charities for sure. But Rotary International has only one charity, our charity, the Rotary Foundation. And why not put your charitable dollar towards our own charity? So it's my charity of choice. the Rotary Foundation. And I ask you to consider making it your charity of choice. And I thank you for what you have done, and I thank you for what you will do. And Bob, there's a 20-minute presentation down to about 10, I think. So, but I'd be happy to talk to anyone afterwards and have a more measured discussion. So thank you for the opportunity, everyone.